Hi guys, so yes, as you probably know, Paprium finally got released. I can't believe it. So I'm going to do a little review of my thoughts on the game. I know I'm late, but I really wanted to do one, and I kind of got the game late anyway because it got delivered to my work and I wasn't in work for, you know, a whole period of time. So I got the game a little bit late, and I've had some other troubles which you'll hear about in the video. But anyway, I just wanted to spend a few weeks playing it, as there's a lot of game to get through, so I kind of had to play it many times to get to the point where I was happy doing a review. So yeah, we got the game, we got the Investor Edition game here to show you, and I'm going to show you the packaging and the contents and everything before we get to the game. And I'm also going to show you the Grand Stick 3 because I got the arcade stick, which is awesome. We're going to have a look at the packaging and the stick and everything, and then we're going to have a look at the game. So yeah, if you're not sick of Paprium content already, let's do it. So firstly we'll have a quick look at the packaging for the game and then the Grand Stick 3. This is the Investor Edition, which originally cost me about £60 I think. It was so long ago it's actually quite hard to remember. If you want to order a copy now, it'll set you back $129 for the regular edition, $169 for a North American or Japanese limited edition, or $339 for a PAL limited edition. No idea why the PAL version costs double that of the others, perhaps they're low on stock, but just to be clear, all the versions are region free, so it's only the packaging that will be different. Obviously, after the debacle with all this, which I won't go into, order at your own risk. Ironically, for those of us who ordered this years ago, the experience was far from happy days. It comes in this box and I absolutely love the colours. This sort of neon pink and purple looks really cool and suits the game very well, I think. One immediate niggle I have is that once you've opened the box, there's no way to properly close it shut again. Inside we have the game in this signature watermelon blister pack. These can be a bit awkward to store. The game box inside is made of cardboard and opens out by folding out several pieces. This is numbered 473 of 1990. The cart, which is again this cool pink, is inside this weird packaging resembling a condom wrapper within this slanted piece of cardboard. Presumably this is designed to resemble an oversized pill pack, which you'll see is a central feature of the game. The whole thing looks absolutely superb, but is sadly form over function. I would have much preferred a traditional clamshell case, and it left me wishing I'd ordered a regular edition as well. Oh well, if need be, I can just design and print off a custom cover and make my own. Also included with the Investor Edition is this rather strange pamphlet from Fonzie, which is supposed to be an introduction to the game, I guess. It's a bit cheeky, some of it, considering the hell investors went through. In it he rips into Mega Drive clones, calling them freshly moulded turds, bosses you around like nobody's business, makes some clarifications about the game's features, and tells Paprium's naysayers to fuck off, literally.
How come? 'Cause I'm the Fonz, huh? Hey!
The funniest part of the whole thing is at the end when he assures you that the pressure of making the game didn't cause cancer, but he should test for AIDS because it hurt. And best of all, he spelt butt B-U-T-T. Maybe that's why the game came in something resembling a condom wrapper to prevent your Mega Drive or Genesis from contracting digital AIDS. We also have some flyers, stickers, a rather nice poster with a map of the game's levels on the back, which also says fuck you. Clearly Fonzie is trying to tell us something here.
The Fonz is not to be made sport of.
There are 2 Paprium postcards, and I assume it's random to which ones you receive. The manual is stunning. It has everything you'd expect: gameplay instructions, button layout, character bios, artwork and so on. It's really, really long. There is a bit of English in there, but hey. Printed on really high quality glossy paper, it is rather nice. Then there's this big book, which definitely is one of the nicest touches here. It's part art book, part manual plus, containing artwork and concept drawings, but also has details on the game's development history, the making of the game and packaging, info on the soundtrack, interviews with the team, and sections on the game itself, including hints on where to locate hidden rooms and secret passages, and achievements that can be completed. A Paprium comic book, which has a 2019 calendar in the back. A pin badge, and again which one you receive will be random, as I believe there are several. This one is based on an energy drink you can find in the game which restores health. And lastly, the most bizarre inclusion of all, a black thong called Armageddon, as worn by the host character Showtime in the game. Showtime! I haven't opened these and don't intend to. They come in extra small, so if you have a micro penis then you're in luck. The quality of all this stuff is quite frankly shockingly good. Everything is printed in such high quality. The manual, art book, all the gubbins are all made to a very high standard. It must have cost a small fortune to produce all this. The cart itself is 80 meg. And remember kids, that's 80 megabits, not megabytes, so it's a 10 megabyte cart. Still, this is the largest cartridge yet on the Mega Drive. I believe the previous record was Watermelon's Pia Solar with a 64 meg cart. Inside the 80 meg cart we can see this rather large Dayton Meister chip, which is, despite Watermelon's claims, actually several different chips under a cover with a fancy metal plate on top. This metal plate doesn't actually do anything, and many people receive their copy of Paprium with a rattle in the cart caused by this plate having come loose. Myself included, but I just opened it up and stuck it back on with a bit of super glue. Removing it altogether won't affect the game, but a bit of glue won't do it any harm either. Here's an image from site Retro RGB of what's actually underneath. What these are and what they do I'm not sure, but Watermelon's FAQ claims that these include extended sprite mode, allowing over 80 sprites on screen, some other visual tweaks, and an audio chip that adds extra channels for both music and sound effects. The cart also has this port, which presumably is for the Mega Wire 4.0, which Watermelon promises will be used for uploading scores online, and most importantly for downloading future updates including new features and patches. The Grand Stick 3 now, which comes in similarly coloured packaging. It looks amazing, but again suffers from the issue of not properly closing once opened. Not that big a deal I suppose, I can store it away fine as long as something is resting against the top. Inside there are a few extra bits. A little card indicating that it's number 262 of 500, another random Paprium postcard, a different poster, and a user manual. We'll get into the user manual in a bit as there is some rather interesting info in there. Of course we have the stick itself, the most well-made stick I've ever owned by far. This thing is just gorgeous. On top you have start and mode buttons, 2 status LEDs, 6 buttons including a light up button A featuring the Watermelon logo, and a rather striking graphic underneath a thick acrylic top. The stick and buttons are genuine Sanwa parts, so thankfully no expense has been spared in that department, and the stick is of course micro-switched. Button A lights up to indicate that you have a blue pill power-up available, which we'll come to when we look at the game. It also has a built-in speaker which occasionally plays speech related to the in-game action. The actual body is made from aluminium and as such has a decent weight to it of 2.8 kilograms. Underneath are these aluminium feet which have a slight springiness to them, allowing for a small amount of give when on your lap or on the surface. On the back are 3 ports, one for the USB cable to connect to a PC, one for the Mega Drive controller cable, and one port for you to plug a second Mega Drive controller into. So if you have 2 Grand Sticks, you can play 4-player games by daisy chaining 2 extra controllers into the sticks. Everything feels of high quality and very sturdy. On the bottom there are also these 8 switches, most of which tweak various options in Paprium's arcade mode. A nice touch is you have this easy access for changing the ball top. You just pop a flathead screwdriver in here and you can switch out the stock black ball top on the stick. Change it to a bat top if you prefer, or this rather fitting pink ball top I had spare, which coincidentally suits the whole Paprium aesthetic quite well, I think. Going back to the manual, it seems that the Grand Stick was designed to work with various different consoles. I actually heard a rumour a few years ago that the stick would be compatible with PC Engine among other consoles, so naturally I was ecstatic. This was before I'd written my money off, of course. I actually tried the stick on my Amiga, as regular Mega Drive controllers work on it and vice versa, but sadly no luck. Maybe this has something to do with how it draws powers from the Mega Drive, I don't know. In the manual we can see evidence of this feature, or at least intended implementation. I'm not sure if this stuff was just left in, or if it really does support all these systems. You have Neo Geo, Saturn, Atari Jaguar, Super Nintendo, NES, Dreamcast and PC Engine shown here. Of course, to actually use them you'd need a custom cable for each, going from the port on the rear of the stick to the corresponding console, and I've been in touch with some friends who are wizards at making this kind of stuff to discuss the feasibility of getting some made. Then I noticed on Watermelon's FAQ there's a bit about this. It states that the listed systems may not be implemented, so who knows which, if any, will work, and states that a development kit will be available shortly. That last statement is very interesting indeed, so I guess watch this space. This stick is absolutely superb, and whatever I think about the game, I'm absolutely chuffed with this. Prior to this, the best stick available for the Mega Drive is probably the IMP sticks, which also work on the PC Engine, but these are so rare that it took me years and years to find one for sale. The Grand Stick 3 trumps this by miles, and this is just such a superb stick for all purposes. I've been using this for all my Mega Drive gaming now, whatever the genre, and it's just a joy to use. And it's an added bonus that it works on PC as well, because I don't own a decent PC arcade stick anymore. Okay, we're quite a way into this video and we still haven't seen or discussed the game itself. Are you still with me? Paprium was conceived many years ago, initially referred to only as Project Y. I followed this for at least 8 years on Watermelon's site, and they even showed screenshots as early as 2014, with the first gameplay footage being shown in March 2015. Also, if you look on Watermelon's YouTube channel, there are behind the scenes videos going back to 2013 which feature music that ended up in the final version of Paprium. The March 2015 gameplay trailer actually looks pretty damn similar to the final project, so needless to say, this has been a long time coming. I won't go into the long and tortuous history with this, most of you probably know it anyway and it's documented very well elsewhere, but most of us had written off the money we paid out for this, so getting a shipping notification just before Christmas was quite the surprise. On starting up the game for the first time, you're greeted with this 8-bit troll version of Paprium. A little joke from Fonzie, set to a rendition of Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up. We've just been rickrolled by a Mega Drive game. Seemingly the game won't work at all on third-party systems like a Mega SG, so if you insert the cart then this joke game is all you're gonna get. There are also compatibility issues with original Mega Drive hardware too. At present it won't run on Model 1 Japanese consoles with model numbers beginning with A10, nor PAL Model 1 Mega Drives or Model 1 Genesis beginning 1601. Thankfully I had 2 Model 1 Mega Drives, a region modded 1600 and a 1601, and I can confirm that Paprium will not run on the latter. These compatibility issues may be fixed in the future via the MegaWire updates. Now, I then ran into another issue with the AI Player 2 via the Mega CD, which I'll come back to in a bit. For recording purposes, I'm playing through a Model 1 Mega Drive via an OSSC. FYI, the Watermelon FAQ states that Paprium will run the same in either 50 or 60 Hz. A quick look at the menu options first. You can change the language, music and sound effects volume, select whether to use the Datenmeister for audio or the Mega Drive's onboard chip, an option to display full screen if playing in 50 Hz, something called Baptism of Fire naming which can be toggled on or off. No idea what that does and I haven't tried it, so if anyone knows let me know in the comments. Wii Sucks, which turns friendly fire on or off, and CPU Mate, which allows you to use your Mega CD or Sega CD as an AI player too. Here's where my console issues came into play. As I said, my 1601 Mega Drive just wouldn't play Paprium as expected, but an unexpected issue is my modded 1600 Mega Drive decided to stop registering my Mega CD. So I had to source another console to use the CPU Player 2 option. I put a post up on Galaxy Sega and thankfully Dave McShane at 8bitbeyond.com came to the rescue and quickly sent over a 1600 Model 1 Mega Drive which works perfectly on both counts. Thanks again Dave, and please check out 8bitbeyond's website which I'll link in the video description. Just listen to that bass and the voice samples in the options menu. First time I played this it really built up my anticipation. Paprium's story, as with most beat-em-ups, is largely irrelevant. It's set in a post-apocalyptic city, the titular Paprium, and sees a band of ex-cops and vigilantes setting out on a mission to batter the shit out of a load of bad guys. That old chestnut. Initially you have 3 playable characters available, Tug, Alex and Dice. Tug is the big, strong, slow character, Alex is fast but weak, and Dice sits nicely in the middle. Of the 3 initial characters, Dice is by far my favourite, with Alex being the least appealing. All the characters have been designed to look very different and they've certainly achieved that. A quick rundown of the controls: C is jump, B is attack and A takes a blue pill. We'll come back to the blue pill shortly, but it's essentially Paprium's version of a frenzy mode. Now the rest of the commands vary depending on whether you're using a 3-button or 6-button controller, and I highly recommend you use the latter. Here's the difference. On the 6-button, X is block. Blocking is a nice touch, adding a nice extra layer to the brawling, but on a 3-button pad you have to hold away and attack together. Not too difficult, but it is preferable to have a dedicated button for it. Y is an attack called Bully, used to hit enemies on the ground or when dazed. On a 3-button controller you'll need to press down and attack, which is extremely awkward, so this attack is really essential to have on a separate button. The bully attack is really useful and you'll see why. And Z is the alternate weapon use button. Unlike Streets of Rage where pressing jump and attack throws your weapon, in Paprium it drops it. To perform an alternate attack like throwing a knife, you'll use Z. Again, very useful having a dedicated button for this, otherwise you'll need to press both B and C and a direction. Pressing B and C without a weapon does exactly what it does in Streets of Rage, performing a reverse attack. Quite useful if you find yourself surrounded. Double tapping left or right sets your character off running. Every character has a unique set of attacks: regular punches or kicks, an aerial attack like a fly kick or flying elbow, a dash attack performed by double tapping a direction to run and then pressing attack, a unique bully attack, and then a special blue pill attack. There are of course grabs and their associated attacks and throws too. Once an enemy is grabbed, you can press jump to switch sides, and if you're behind a character you can use them as a human shield. Paprium's gameplay doesn't need much explaining, it's a beat 'em up. Walk right and fight, or sometimes left. Make your way through this wacky dystopian city, beating the shit out of anyone you encounter. The city is vibrant and colourful, surprisingly so actually. It's amazing what they've done to portray a living, breathing city here. The backgrounds are insanely detailed and busy, There are people doing random things in the background, there's graffiti all over the place, neon signs, insane amounts of background animation. Vending machines can be punched, which then spit out items. TV screens and loudspeakers will spout music or speech until destroyed. The attention to detail is quite frankly astounding for a Mega Drive game. There are heavy cyberpunk influences here, drawing from classic films and futuristic anime, but with a very wacky take on things. Perhaps the most impressive visual aspect is the illusion of neon and fluorescent light. There are neon signs everywhere and pretty much always some kind of flashing lights on the screen. This effect is achieved by some fast strobe effect colour cycling using a very bright fluorescent colours, and the end result looks absolutely stunning. A prime example is this level in a club. Several lighting effects are used in tandem here, which not only looks superb, but makes you feel like you're actually scrapping your way through a dingy club. Brilliantly well executed and one of Paprium's strongest assets, just not too epilepsy friendly. Parallax is well implemented too, whether it's used to simulate water or mist creeping its way across the city streets. The backgrounds aren't the only thing bustling with detail, the foreground has plenty going on too. Often objects or characters will walk or drift across the screen in the foreground, for example these Chinese lanterns, or when enemies cross the screen before walking on to fight you. There are more subtle details too, like this poor guy hanging onto the lift for dear life before plunging to his death. Everything is just stylised to the max. Graphically, Paprium is turned up to 11. Even the startup screen looks tits. Despite Fonzie pointing out that Paprium is not a Streets of Rage sequel, I'll inevitably be drawing comparisons to it, and in fact Streets of Rage 2 specifically, which for me is not only the best in the series, but the greatest game on the console. A few of the levels are indeed reminiscent of Streets of Rage, for example fighting on a diagonally moving lift, but for the most part Paprium's levels feel pretty fresh. There are a lot of different areas and levels, and each one feels distinct in its style and overall vibe. Yes, Paprium is absolutely massive. You have two gameplay modes at first, arcade and original. There's also an arena mode to unlock which I haven't done yet, so I can't comment on that. The game has 3 difficulty settings at first, easy, hard and very hard. I'd recommend playing on very hard as the other 2 are quite easy. Arcade mode is what you would expect from a beat 'em up. There are several routes to take, adding variety, and further routes can be opened up via original mode. Original mode is the real meat of the game and what takes Paprium up a notch in terms of scale and longevity. In original mode you get some choices in terms of the route you take, so playing through the game can be different every time. There are also secret shortcuts, hidden alternate routes and secret rooms to find. Secret rooms contain useful items, and hidden paths not only offer shortcuts or access to otherwise unseen areas, but can also allow you to unlock extra content. And there are a ton of secrets and unlockables. You can unlock extra characters, new routes, a 4th Paprium difficulty and so on. Some levels are only accessible by dying at a certain point. You may die somewhere and be taken to jail by the police, so when you're continuing you're escaping from jail. Other times you'll find yourself tied up and you'll have to break free by mashing B, or you'll find yourself in rehab. You may never see some of these levels if you never have to continue under specific conditions. Rehab is especially funny as you get to see recovering crackhead versions of the enemies. When you complete a run you have the option to throne a character. This will make that character unusable on that save, so any subsequent playthroughs will need to be with another character. You can have 3 saves, so it's not like you're locking out that character altogether. Annoyingly, unlockable content is tied to a save, so if you unlock the extra characters then you'll need to keep hold of that save to play as them. A bit annoying, as I would have liked the playable characters to unlock across the board once unlocked, and for them to then stay that way. Throning a character opens up additional levels as long as your playthrough ends in the same area. Instead of finding the boss you previously defeated, you'll find your mate in control of the area and they'll give you a mission. Unlocking and completing these missions opens up yet more content. In total, to see everything and unlock all the content and get all the endings, you're going to need to play through the whole game many times, at least 10, and that's if you know what you're doing. You can also open up extra routes for arcade mode. All these routes and prerequisites give you different endings, a good, bad and unsure ending. Don't get too excited though, the ending is just a screen. I've played through this probably 20 or so times prior to this review, and there's still a massive amount of content to unlock and levels I probably haven't seen yet. The scale is mind-blowing really, it's just a shame the throning system etc is all a bit cryptic. Enemies are quite varied, although you will see dozens of the same enemy type during a run. Each of the 4 districts is either controlled by a particular gang or by the police, so each has some related unique enemy types. Again, it's unavoidable to draw comparisons with Streets of Rage, with these punks who resemble the Signal characters from Streets of Rage, complete with similar sliding attack, and this rather flamboyant chap in leather boots who looks just like Ash from Bare Knuckle 3. On the whole though, the characters are very fun and unique enough. With any beat 'em up there will be similarities to past games, that's just the nature of the beast, and it's quite nice that there are nods to the Streets of Rage series in there. Some enemies are interactive, allowing you to ride or wear them after defeat. For example, there's this cleaning droid you can ride, these roller skating enemies which you can piggyback on and control, and these Kong robots which will leave behind a shell which you can wear as an exoskeleton for super strength. There are also vehicles to ride which can attack and provide defence, like the forklift and dodgems. The enemy AI is very weak at times, and you can quickly learn to predict their behaviours and thus exploit them. Occasionally an enemy will get stuck off the screen, but after a set amount of time they'll just drop in from above, so not a huge issue there. The sprites in the game are super chunky and look absolutely gorgeous, and are animated in exceptional detail. Even the idle animations for the player characters are impressive, and the bosses are just huge. Bosses are a bit of old and a bit of new, but either way they all have that Paprium gloss on them, they just look fantastic. What isn't fantastic is how the boss's health is displayed. In Streets of Rage, if a boss has several health bars, they are represented by different colours. Paprium sort of does the same. The boss has a blue health bar instead of yellow, but this stays full until the health is low enough to display the yellow bar. It's a strange design choice which is incredibly frustrating, as you have no idea how much health a boss has left until they're almost defeated. This means that you can't judge which attacks are and aren't effective against them. The end of game boss you'll encounter will vary depending on your character and chosen route. Some other notable characters are Showtime, the thong-wearing host of Paprium TV. You'll find him as a boss on one level, depending on your route of course, but his voice is ever present, shouting at you while you fight your way through the game. The speech is really good actually, although it's quite hard to understand what the hell is being said most of the time. And the Grand Stick 3's internal speaker shouts stuff at you too, like "oh no" when you get knocked down. One of the best characters is an NPC called Sexy Sax Man. This guy just turns up and starts playing his saxophone in time with the music. What a fucking legend. Plus, robot titties. Collectibles include food items which replenish your health, some sort of lube which damages your health if consumed, extra lives, cards which give you bonus points, weapons and blue pills. If left alone for too long, enemies will steal some of these items, so don't leave them hanging. Weapons include some beat 'em up staples like lead pipes and knives, but there are some really fun and innovative weapons here too. Highlights are the electric police baton, which zaps any enemies it touches, and the fire extinguisher, which freezes enemies solid. This is where the alternate weapon button I mentioned earlier comes in handy. Pressing Z or B and C in a direction performs a secondary action for that weapon. Weapons like the baton and life are thrown when you press it, but the fire extinguisher performs a bash motion. So you can use its normal attack to freeze enemies and then the secondary attack to hit them with it. It looks really good and is definitely the game's most unique weapon. The blue pills are drugs which allow you to go into a berserk mode, during which time pressing attack will perform a strong power attack. Mash this as much as you can before it wears off, as it's very damaging while making you almost invulnerable at the same time. The blue area of your health bar indicates the level of your addiction to this drug, which increases the more you use it in a level. Once your health depletes low enough to be near or in the blue area, your character will enter crisis mode. Their idle stance will change to a fatigued look, and the game's music will get all squiffy and distorted. Don't worry, your Mega Drive isn't playing up, it's just that you're on death's door. Crucially, when in crisis mode, your character is no longer able to consume blue pills. Each playable character has a different sized health bar and varying levels of blue pill addiction at the game's start, and of course a different power attack when under the influence. Becoming too addictive seemingly has consequences, but honestly it's never realistically an issue. The music, composed by Groovemaster 303 and J-Red, is nothing short of outstanding. It warms you up instantly with some superb menu and character select screens, but then the first level's music is somewhat underwhelming. Not terrible, just perhaps the worst the game has to offer. Subsequent levels just ramp up the quality, delivering varied pieces in different genres and atmosphere. Once you get a rhythm going, delightfully accompanied by one of Paprium's banging tracks, you soon realise that it's one of the Mega Drive's most accomplished soundtracks, aided by Paprium's onboard sound chip. And there's almost 3 hours of unique music to experience. The sound effects are somewhat more hit and miss. They're very good on the whole. The clang of a dropped pipe or rev of an engine sounds superb, and the little background elements like the loudspeakers and TV screens are very welcome embellishments. But where it falls down is with the sound effects for the attacks. Again, sorry to compare this to Streets of Rage 2, but listen to these impact sound effects. Versus this. It's a real shame because Paprium has clearly demonstrated that it can trump a regular Mega Drive release in the sound department, but chose not to in this regard. Some really beefy thwacks to accompany the punches would have taken this to the next level. Still, punches and kicks do feel satisfying, just a bit of a missed opportunity there to make them proper weighty. And that leads us nicely to the hit detection. After all, a beat 'em up is made or broken on its hit detection, and I'll admit, after seeing gameplay videos I was ready for Paprium's to be subpar. But I was thankfully pleasantly surprised. The hit detection is pretty good, although not the best. Punches don't feel quite as tactile as some of the genre's greats, being somehow less visceral and impactful as those in Streets of Rage or Capcom's arcade beat-em-ups. Grabs and throws are great, and throwing an enemy at a group of his or her colleagues is as satisfying as ever. You can also throw your partner at them, and as long as friendly fire is turned off, they'll land on their feet like a cat. Another niggle I have is that sometimes it feels like you're on the same plane as an enemy but aren't hitting them. But this also works both ways. Often a fly kick will take out a group of enemies even if some of them aren't on the same level horizontally. And that's a segue into another niggle I have with the combat, the aerial attack. Whether your character has a flying kick or elbow, the aerial attack, performed by jumping and pressing attack, is ridiculously overpowered. Not only does it take out every enemy without fail, including bosses, it also makes you nigh on invincible during the animation. It's all too tempting to resort to these air attacks when things get heated, as it's a guaranteed win. Even bosses aren't immune, so some well-timed fly kicks are often the best course of action, especially when blue pills aren't available. You could quite easily sail through the entire game just spamming this attack. Admittedly, that wouldn't be much fun, but it is a useful get out of jail free card when shit hits the fan. The bully attack, as it's called, triggered by pressing Y or down and B, is useful for attacking dazed enemies. When an enemy's health is low or after a series of attacks, they'll be dazed, indicated by a Street Fighter-esque ring of stars around their head. Finish them off with a low blow, the bully attack. This comes in handy for these pesky ground crawling creatures, which are probably the most annoying enemy in the game. They're too low for regular attacks. You can also use the good old fly kick of course, but it's useful nonetheless. These creatures will attack you and other enemies, so not all bad I suppose, and now that I mention it, occasionally other enemies do attack each other at random times. Overall the game feels less balanced than some beat 'em ups, but at the same time avoids being too easy or too unfair. You can play the game in 2-player co-op, and if so, it's best to turn off friendly fire in the options menu. The game can get very hectic at times with many characters on screen, so it's easy to end up hitting your partner. As I said, if you don't have a friend to hand, you can use your Mega CD for player 2. Just press start on the second controller, select a character, and the AI will take over if a button isn't pressed on the controller after 3 seconds. Now, this AI is good and bad. It's surprisingly competent in some areas and downright infuriating in others. Take for example pickups. For every item there are now 2, so you can hoggle the blue pills collecting both. Health is a little more tricky. Sometimes the AI will behave, leaving a health pickup until the very last minute, as if it's waiting patiently until it's sure you don't want it. But other times it will go in like a bull in a china shop and gobble up both health pickups, even if it's at full health already. You can sometimes combat this by leaving the containers intact until you need the food, but it's often easier said than done considering a thrown enemy or stray kick will destroy them, exposing the food. But overall the AI is pretty clever. It's never idle, always attacking or at least drawing enemy attacks away from you, and makes use of the character's whole arsenal of attacks. It doesn't however learn the tricks, so if you know a particular strategy that works for an enemy or boss, your AI buddy will be none the wiser. According to the manual, the mode button on the controller changes the AI player's behaviour in game. I haven't quite sussed out what exactly this does. You can actually give your partner a blue pill by holding them from behind, then holding A or pressing X on a 6-button controller. You can even give pills to enemies in the same way, apparently. Some won't do anything but some will, although I'm yet to find an enemy that does anything. There are, I believe, 3 unlockable characters: Electra, this armless electrified woman, Baba, an old but nimble staff-wielding Chinese man, and this mutant shark thing called Spinal. If you're interested in how to unlock them, Electra and Baba can be unlocked in one playthrough by taking this ladder shortcut in the powder zone and then this door in the docks. It's quite a long route but will unlock both characters in one run. I haven't actually unlocked Spinal yet and I'm not exactly sure how that's done, so if anyone knows, let me know in the comments. These unlockable characters manage to stand out both in terms of design and how they play, and are probably the freshest and most unique playable characters in the game. Electra has quite a unique fighting style, having no arms, but she's immune to electric attacks, which is very useful in some areas of the game. Her blue pill and health bars are absolutely huge. I like Baba's bully animation where he uses his staff like a baseball bat to hit enemies. He also has the added bonus of being able to teach you how to hack the NX terminals found in certain areas, which summons a transport shuttle, allowing any of your characters to open up even more branching paths. In fact, the first time I played as him, I hacked the first terminal, which took me to a whole route full of levels I had never seen before. Annoyingly, this Skyline route also gave me the unsure ending, which then locked out my entire save. This is such a stupid design feature. Why would I want my save locked out? And that was the save with my characters unlocked. Beyond frustrating. Having then consulted the manual, I can see that it only states upon completing the game the save slot will be locked. What? Why would you do this? So I'd recommend copying any valuable saves you have if possible. Lesson learnt, I guess. I sincerely hope they update this at some point, because that's just the worst idea ever for a beat 'em up, especially when unlockable content is tied to the save. Neither Baba nor Elektra can use weapons, presumably because Baba is already holding a staff and Elektra has no arms. If you try to pick up throwable items, the character will just instantly throw them, so they're not entirely useless if you time it right. When Elektra picks up the shock baton, however, she gets this electric whip, which is a pretty cool touch. Another thing that annoys me about Paprium is the scoring system. There is no in-game display, so you never know what your score is, and after the levels you get a score, but it's displayed as an alphanumeric code, so it's largely pointless, if you'll excuse the pun. So is it fun? Hell yes, it's fun. I've been playing this solidly for weeks now, having played tens of hours, and I'm still having a blast. Streets of Rage 2 I go back to all the time, but one playthrough and I'm done. But with Paprium I'll happily play it twice in a row or more, because the varying routes open up a level of longevity and replayability that most other beat 'em ups just don't have. You're getting a lot of content for your money here, a lot more than you'd rightly expect from a beat 'em up. It does a lot of things better than Streets of Rage series ever did, but of course performs poorer on many counts too, like the weaker AI and less refined balance. Arcade classic beat 'em ups like Alien vs Predator manage to have a fair amount going on screen and look flashy, but they also have it where it really counts, the combat. Paprium's combat system isn't quite as nuanced or satisfying at the end of the day, and a beat 'em up success really boils down to the beating up, as it were, but that doesn't mean it isn't enjoyable. Will it stand the test of time the same way the best beat 'em ups have after 30 years? Only time will tell. To be honest, I was more than ready for Paprium to be an unfinished mess, but look at what we ended up with. The graphics and sound are some of the Mega Drive's best, the gameplay is an absolute blast despite its flaws, it's absolutely massive. Seriously, what's not to love? If this had been released during the console's lifetime, it would have been regarded as an utter classic. I rate the graphics 5 out of 5 Fonzies. The sound 5 out of 5 Fonzies. The gameplay 3 out of 5 Fonzies. Longevity 5 out of 5 for a beat 'em up. And Watermelon's communication 1 Ralph Mouth. So is it worth the $129 asking price? Yes, probably. Fantastic game, I can't believe it was actually released. The level of detail is incredible, and despite its flaws it's brilliant fun. Like it or not, this is one of the Mega Drive's finest games. These happy days are indeed yours and my happy days. Thanks for watching.